All right, everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to be adding design to the last tutorial I did on HTML, so building that structure. This time we're going to be putting some CSS into it. So just to give a little recap of what we were working with, this was currently what our original page was looking like. So of course, it's very much random. Just went over showing you how to create structures and things of that nature in HTML. So you see, we pretty much have all basic things, nothing too crazy. There's really no design components. So that is what I'm going to get into today. So instead of focusing at least on all of these pages, which I will do in another video, I am just going to focus on the home page for this tutorial. So you see we have a little bit of designing in play, and with this designing we did use some CSS, but that was prior to you knowing what that was. So we'll go ahead and go back to the code, and in this case we are going to be working with our home page, which mine was named this. And here you will see right here, this is actually the CSS. Now we did cover this again before you knew what it was, but this is CSS in the inline style. So we put it in line with our actual HTML element. So again, there's multiple ways you can do HTML. Now, in this case, we have our head section and we have the title there as well. So you can use CSS in different ways. So we did inline, we can do external, and we can do our internal. So I'll start with internal since we are here. And our internal is simply going to place our styling within our head element right here. So make sure it's within here. You would do style like that, and then that would create our CSS within it. So in this case, let's see what we have so far. We have our right here is where we have our menu bar, which we have not designed yet. So we would have to add some designing to that. And we do not have any designing on H2. So I was trying to see what we did not design yet. So H2 has no designing. So if you go up here in your internal CSS, you could pretty much put your styling for your H1 here, or H2, excuse me. So how will we do that? You would simply type whatever the element is, H2, do curly braces like that, and then inside of the curly braces is where you would be putting in your color. So we could simply do color, and then we can see that the colors show up here. Now again, this is Visual Studio Code, so this wouldn't be the case for everyone, but here, if you go down, you see it offers us various different colors that we could use. And in this case, I'll just select one. So let's go with dark violet. To end your CSS, you would put your semicolon there, and then that would be the end of the styling there. Now, another thing we could do is we could type text align, and then again, Visual Studio Code will kind of help you out while you're typing. So let's just say center. And then that would pretty much put our building a web page with that color and that centering. So if we were to go back to our page and refresh, now you see it is that color and it is now centered. So that was an example of an internal CSS styling. So far we've used the inline CSS and we've used internal CSS. Now, another case of CSS that you could use is going to be your external. And how your external would work would be to simply, let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. So over on our files over here, you would click a new file, and what you could say is about me .css. And you see it has that icon. So when you click enter, it will then create a CSS file. Now, in this CSS file, you could simply put whatever you wanted to as far as your CSS, and you would just simply start typing that out. So let's say body, and then let me move that. And then let's say we just want to do a background color. So we say background color, and then we'll choose a background color for this. So let's just find a light color that we could use in this. All right, let's go with dim gray. All right, so you see we have that. Now, so far, this would not show up on our actual web page because we haven't connected the two pages yet. So how would you do that? You would simply go back to your HTML page right there, and then we would have to link it inside of our code. So within our head section again, we would put a link, and in this case you would say link, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that like that so I don't forget my end. And you can say href equals, and then we're going to put in whatever we named our CSS, which would be that. And then we'll come here to our page. Let's refresh that. So far, no changes. Oh, let me see if I put my, I think I forgot something on this end. href link rel equals, let's put style sheet. And then let's see. Yep, there we go. So I forgot my style sheet reference there. So now you see we pretty much changed the background. And this page is now using all the different ways you can use your CSS. So again, if we go back to Visual Studio Code, this is going to be our external CSS file, which is linked via this about me.css file here. So that's a separate file. And this is used if you don't want all of your CSS to be in one place. Then you have the example of your inline, which is literally inside of the line that you're trying to design. And then you also just have your internal CSS, which is right here. So that's just showing it internally within your code. So those are the three ways of doing CSS. So going back to our current example, we had right now, we just have my first web page. We have learning HTML. We have our menu bar, an image, building a web page, and a quick paragraph that has a background color on it. So right now, obviously, in this example, we do not have a very clean website. We pretty much just did a bunch of random components for this exercise just to show you different ways of doing your actual HTML files. So you can, again, create a more structured website, which in this case, I will do another video where it's more structured as far as, content and what's going on. But in this case, I'm just kind of randomly doing a bunch of things to just allow you to see various examples of different components we've mentioned so far. All right, so the first thing I want to cover for this part is at least going over designing our menu bar, because as of right now, you see we don't really have a good looking menu bar. So if I go back to our Visual Studio Code, this code right here is where our menu bar is. So again, I mentioned in the last video, in the CSS lecture, that you can use a class, and that class can be used to do the designing. And in this case, we do want to use this class to design. So how do we do that? So you see our class name is called top nav, and we want to then work with top nav to design it. So the first thing we're going to do in this case, you can again use whichever way of styling you want. As our CSS is going to get bigger, I'm just going to stick with our external CSS and work with that, but you can choose which way you want. So here we will go ahead and add dot top nav, and that is how you would call your class. So you would put a dot, follow it by the class name, and the class name we're using is top nav. Now, the first thing I want to do is at least add a background color to our nav bar, and in this case I'll just go ahead and do a simple one. So let's just do black, and that would then give us some sort of color for our nav bar. So coming back here, reset. Now we see we have a black sort of menu bar. It still doesn't look like a menu bar because we have to add in our padding. We have to align it. So we're going to work with that now. So I want you to take note that .top nav deals with just the structure of that div class or that div container. And going back to our HTML, here we have our div container. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to design the actual top nav A sections. So you see here, which would be our links. So we're going to design those separately. And that is where our spacing will come into play. So if we go back to our page, we would add another section within our CSS. So .top nav, where we'll add A, because we have that A section. So inside of here, we would then add what we are trying to put into our, or what designing we want to put into the actual items within our menu. So each item is an A class reference. So first, I would like to do a text align, and we're going to center that out so that all of our words are centered. And then we're going to add a padding. So remember, padding is your spacing. And again, you can control how your padding is. So in this case, I want to cover the padding top and bottom. So let's just go ahead and we'll do 14 by 14. And then let's say I want to change my font size. So we'll change my font size. And you see you have all of these options. In this case, I'm just going to use pixels. So I'm going to say 20 pixels like that. And then you can also do, like, for example, the font family. So you could say font family. And then you see it has like all of these choices. And I'm just going to choose one for this case. So we'll go ahead and just let's do that one. And that will do our font family for us. And of course you can do color lastly. So let's just say color, and I'm just going to do something simple, like maybe just white. All right, so that would be some designing we would have for our links. So when I'm saying links, that's meaning these right here. So all of this that says A within top nav. So on our CSF, we did dot top nav and A, and these are all A components. So basically we're saying we want to design these portions of our page. So that's what we just did. Now coming back here, if we refresh, now you see that we have bigger labels for them, about me, dreams, and future career. So we do have that. And so far, so good on that. Another thing you could do is the float. Not that you have to, but you could do a float if you want to float it a certain direction. But that would be another example of that. So, so far so good. Everything's looking great. One thing we would want to do is have a active button. So if you come back to your Visual Studio, you see here we have this active. You can even design that as well. So um, it's basically a class within a class within a class in a sense. So we have this class. So we would have dot top nav a, and then we would have dot active because that's another class name. So how do we do this? If we go back to our CSS, we would create another section. So we could say dot top nav a dot, and then our next class name was active, like that. Go ahead and put this here, and let me remove the spacing here. All right. So that would basically say for our active page, we would want to highlight it, and that's basically what that's implying. So we could say here, background color. Let me see, background. And then we had black, so let's just do red instead of searching. So we'll say we want a red active. Now, when our red is active, let's say we want our text color to look a different way. So in this case, let's just do black. Black. All right, and then that would change for our active page. Coming here, let's reset, and now you see it is highlighting our active page. So again, if I were to click on About Me, it is not applying because I technically have not linked my CSS file to these other pages. So that is something I do want you to take note of, that it's not actually going to show you the CSS unless you link it across all of your pages. And right now we only have it on our first page. So again, to link it, we would just have to go take that link right here and paste it on each other page that we have that we want to have that designing component of. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I'll go here. Again, you have to add, see, to show you, you would have to either use your style within here or use the link directly. So in the rest of the pages, I'm not going to be using style. That was just an example here. For the rest of the pages, I'm just going to use the direct link to the CSS page. So you would place that within your head and right there. So that's one page. We got another one that we have here. And then we have another one here. So that would then put our designing with our CSS page into all of our pages. Head back here, refresh. So now you would see that they're all connected. So the designing worked across the board there. Of course, here our padding is not all the way there either. So if we were to go back here, let's just change our padding. All right. So we have some padding here. For example, if you just change the numbers, and I'm just going to change the numbers so you can see what we're working with here. We'll do that. And you see it changed the padding of our actual framing around our .a element when it is being highlighted. So you see now it's kind of running off and it doesn't necessarily align. So if you go back to your visual, that is going to deal with pretty much the actual sizing around it. You could technically add some padding here. So for example, we could do some padding here. And they do have this auto one. So I don't know if everyone's editor has auto, but just for example, we'll see what it looks like. And a lot of times I will say when you are using Visual Studio Code, it's a learning opportunity. So if you don't know what it does, just try it out. So in this case, you see there's nothing crazy going on with that. So there's probably other components you would need to use there. So just it's really literally just you have to just sit there and test different things out. So we'll say 20 here, and I'll say 20 here, and then come back here, refresh, and now you see it matches. So you literally just have to kind of look at the designing you've done for one area and then another area and then try to match it. Of course, it's not necessarily all the way cleaned up. In this case, I'm not necessarily asking you to clean it up because this is just an intro to it, just some standard um, designing that you could do. But that would be a simple case of designing some CSS in here. So, um, again, the best way to learn CSS is if you go to W3 Schools here, and then they have a bunch of examples. So over here, you come in here, it shows you like backgrounds, which we colored, how to do that, which we technically already did. But if you wanted to do like a background image, for example, it shows you that. Here's the padding that we just worked with. So it's showing you like padding around this text box right here. And then it tells you the different types of padding you can do. So if you want to specify, if you want it at the top, the right, the bottom, or the left. Here's your text. So if you want to try out different text, you can do that as well. Oh, color. Let's speak about color. So there are a lot of colors out there. So you see here they offer their own on W3 Schools, and they have some like breakdowns of the different colors that you can use here. But another thing you could do is actually do like a color picker, and they have this color picker here, and you see you can literally come online and oops, where'd it go, and create your own color. So you can drag this around, and as you drag it around or click around, it changes the color value here or your RGB value. And all you would have to do is copy this or copy this value, one or the other, depending on you. So I'll just go ahead and do this for example. So let's say we wanted this color. I'll take one of the color values, I'll copy it. And if you come to your page here, and let's just say I wanted to change my background color to that. So I'll just erase that. You place this here, and then you see it automatically showed us that exact same color we just created from the internet. And when you refresh your page, it should pretty much show the new color, which it does in this case. So that is where this color picker comes into play, because you can literally come here and just create any shade of color that you want and place it on your website. So that is a cool thing I would say about that. Now, the color picker I'm using is directly through Google, but there are actual websites that you can use to do the same thing if you so choose to do that, but just wanted to highlight that there. Going back to the different CSS features on here, um, icons, if you want to add an icon, it shows you how to do that, and it shows you how to get them. So here you have go to fontawesome.com, and they will give you like a kit full of icons you can use, and you can embed them inside of your code. If you want to design your list, here's some designing there. Again, another trick, if you go to the try it yourself, it pretty much shows you what's going on here. And here it's just showing you how it designed the way the list appear for each one. So that's what's going on right here in these sets of CSS styling. But the examples they have, if you click the try it yourself, you'll see what it has and how to use it. Display. So again, if you scroll down, you see it goes on forever, forever, forever. And you can even do gradients. So if you like a color like this, again, the more you try it, the better off you will be. But you can do a lot of different things with CSS. So in this case, I would say W3 Schools is definitely a good tool, whether it's your HTML, so structure, or your CSS for designing. Um, so I will come back here. And overall, that was just pretty much a quick tutorial of how to get into CSS, what it's like to build a web page and create a structure and design. Obviously, in our case, if we wanted to create a very well put together website, we would have to spend a lot of time, and the tutorial will be hours and hours worth of information. So I'm not going to do that to anyone. But of course, we did just do something simple and designing just a random page we put together. So of course, we could expand on the career, the dreams, the about me page a lot further. But that is something I would say that I would hope all of you would like to expand further on your own to kind of learn more about HTML and CSS. But yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap up the video here so it's not too long. So this was pretty much a quick, easy introduction into how to use CSS, the 3 different ways you can use it. Again, in my case, I use the external CSS file. That does not have to be the case for all uses. You can do it any 3 of the ways, which I did show you all 3. So whichever one you feel more comfortable with is the one I would recommend. But hopefully you found this useful, and this starts the journey of your website building if you are curious. So thank you for looking at this tutorial, and I will see you in the next video.